The galaxy had lived in peace for so long that most people no longer believed in war. Armies were small, fleets were scattered, and no one remembered the last real battle. 500,000 years had passed since the humans were defeated and erased from the stars. The official story told in schools was simple. Humans were a violent, dangerous race, but the great galactic conquest had ended them forever. Children laughed when they heard the tale. Even historians spoke of it as a legend, not history. But on one quiet night, everything changed. It began in the Yilan sector, a cluster of 12 bright star systems connected by busy trade routes. Thousands of ships passed through every day, carrying food, metals, and rare crystals. Traders joked that you could set your watch by the pattern of freighters arriving. Then, without warning, the stars began to vanish. It wasn't an explosion. There was no sound, no flash, no warning at all. One moment, the stars burned bright on every scanner. The next moment, they were gone as if someone had pulled a blanket over that part of the galaxy. On the navigation decks of dozens of ships, alarms screamed. Pilots slammed controls, thinking their sensors had failed. Engineers rebooted systems again and again, but nothing changed. The sky in that direction was simply black. A transport captain named Dreth was the first to report it to the central network. His voice was shaky, almost afraid to say the words. "This isn't sensor failure," he told the control station. "I can see it with my own eyes. The stars are gone. Something's blocking them." Within an hour, the news spread across the sector. Government scientists tried to calm the public. They said it was a natural phenomenon, maybe a massive dust cloud. The Galactic Senate held a brief meeting and released a statement: "There is no threat. Continue normal operations." But not everyone believed them. On a lonely moon far from the trade lanes, an old alien named Corv read the reports with a heavy heart. He was not a scientist or a soldier. He was a historian. In the deepest archives, long before the official history was rewritten, he had read about the humans' final words before their disappearance. It was recorded in one forgotten battle log, translated from an ancient human dialect. The sentence was simple: "When the stars go dark, we return." Corvée had never told anyone about it. He had laughed at the idea himself until now. More reports came in. The dark zone was expanding. One by one, the edges of nearby systems began to fade. Navigation buoys vanished from sensors. Patrol ships sent to investigate simply stopped. Responding was as if the blackness swallowed them whole. In the Senate chamber, the politicians argued. Some wanted to send the main fleet to investigate. Others claimed it was an illusion, a trick by rival species. In the middle of the noise, Admiral Selvig rose to speak. His voice cut through the shouting. "I have seen this before," he said. "Not with my eyes, but in the war logs of my grandfather. Ships moving without light, targets erased from the map. The humans did this in the first invasion." Laughter followed his words. Many senators shook their heads. Admiral one said, "Humans are gone. You might as well warn us about ghosts." Selvig did not laugh. "If this is the work of humans, then it is already too late to stop them." From the Senate, on the cold edge of the dark zone, a tiny listening station floated in space. Its crew of 3 was used to boredom watching for pirate activity, logging meteor storms. That night, they detected something strange. A faint, repeating signal pulsed through the void. At first, it was just static. Then, the computer's translation software found patterns. The crew's screens filled with a short line of text. It read, "Phase 1 complete." The station commander stared at the message for a long time before sending it to Central Command. By the time the reply came, the dark zone had reached them. One by one, their power systems died. The lights went out. The only sound was the slow, steady beeping of the incoming signal, repeating endlessly in the darkness. No one heard from the station again in the days that followed. Panic began to spread in the outer systems. Civilian ships refused to travel near the dark zone. Entire colonies evacuated, their skies filled with fleeing transports. Yet the Senate still refused to admit danger. And then, In the midst of the fear, someone hacked into the galactic communication grid. Across millions of screens, a single image appeared. It was a shadow massive, sharp-edged, like the shape of some ancient predator. No one could see its full outline, but it was moving, and it was coming from inside the dark zone. Beneath the image were words in an old, dead human language. Somehow everyone understood them. 500,000 years ago you took our worlds. Now we take them back. People watched in silence. Somewhere deep inside, they felt something they could not explain, an old primal fear. The kind that came from stories told before bed, warnings whispered to children, and history lessons. That always ended with a laugh. But no one was laughing now, and as the darkness spread, one thing became certain. Whatever was coming had been waiting for a very, very long time. The darkness had a shape now. At first, the disappearing stars were just an eerie pattern on navigational charts. But as days passed, deep space observation posts began to detect something more: vast shadows moving inside the black zone. Weren't drifting like dust clouds. They moved with purpose, with speed, and sometimes they changed formation. In the frozen wastelands of the Velaran Fringe, a small patrol corvette named Lottie's picked up strange readings. The ship's scanners showed nothing, no energy, no heat, not even debris. But on the forward viewport, the crew could see it, a faint outline against the emptiness. Bigger than anything they had ever imagined. It's like a mountain. One officer whispered. No, the captain said slowly. That's a ship. Before they could report their findings, the shape tilted just slightly, like it had turned its attention toward them. Every alarm on the Lotties blared at once, but nothing attacked. No weapons fire, no boarding craft. The shadow simply slid past them, silent, cold, and impossibly huge. When the corvette returned to base, the crew filed their report. The command officers dismissed it as a sensor malfunction. But late that night, the captain received a private message from an unlisted source. It was a grainy image taken from a civilian mining ship in another sector showing the same massive silhouette. And there were more of them. Across the galaxy, similar sightings began to stack up. Merchant captains swore they had been overtaken by black shapes gliding between the stars. Pirate fleets vanished without distress calls. A long-range science probe captured 2 seconds of distorted footage, ships shaped like hunting beasts, each the size of moons, and the signal cut off. In the great halls of the Galactic Senate, the mood shifted from mockery to unease. The word human was whispered in private conversations, though never spoken publicly. The old war records described human Titan-class vessels, massive warships. Designed to outgun entire planetary defense networks, the records also claimed they had all been destroyed, but Admiral Selvig, who had been laughed at only a week before, stood before the Senate again. This time, they were listening. The old enemy has returned, he said, his voice heavy. And they are not sending scouts. This is an armada. An armada. One senator asked, why would they hide? Why not attack? Because they're patient, Selvig replied. Because they want us afraid before the first shot is fired. Meanwhile, out beyond the reach of the Senate's arguments, a lone cargo freighter named Vela Dawn was limping through the trade lanes after an engine failure. The crew was quiet, watching the dark horizon. Then, without warning, the stars ahead vanished, not in a blink, but as if something enormous was sliding into place between them and the galaxy. The captain, a grizzled veteran named Horik, grabbed the cum and tried to hail the object. No response. The ship's sensors still showed nothing, as if space ahead was empty. But the crew's eyes told a different story, and then they saw it. Lights tiny at first, like sparks on a black ocean, flickering across the shape. Moved in strange, coordinated patterns, racing across the hull in a way that made no sense. The crew realized with growing horror that it wasn't lights at all. It was windows. The shadow passed them without firing. But as it did, the Vela Dawn's cum system crackled to life with a voice none of them recognized. It was low, cold, and calm. Observe. Remember, Tell them we're coming. The freighter limped to the nearest station and broadcast the warning. Within hours, the message was suppressed by the Senate's Information Division. The official statement claimed the freighter had been attacked by pirates, but fear was spreading faster than any news report. Refugee ships began to leave worlds near the Black Zone. Entire colonies shut down their spaceports. Smugglers refused to travel anywhere near the shadows. One night, in the control room of a deep space listening post, a junior technician was monitoring the faint background noise of the galaxy when he noticed something strange. A signal so weak it was almost gone was pulsing at regular intervals. He filtered it, amplified it, and froze. It was a voice that said only one thing, over and over, in a language half the galaxy had forgotten. Phase 2 is ready. Deep inside the darkness, far beyond the reach of any Senate ship, the Armada gathered. Hundreds of warships black as the void, silent as the grave moved into formation. Their weapons were cold. Their engines made no heat. And yet they advanced. They were waiting for the signal to begin. The mining colony on Harvos 9 woke too. Silence. It was an unnatural silence. It's not the quiet of deep space, but the kind that comes when every machine stops at the same time. The drills, the conveyors, the generators, everything simply went dead. Miners looked at one another in confusion, holding their tools mid-swing. In the distance, dust hung in the air like it had been frozen in place. At first, the foreman thought it was a power grid failure. He called the central plant. No answer. He tried the security post. Nothing. Even the colony's emergency coms were silent. The air itself seemed heavier. There was a faint metallic taste that made people cough. Then came the first explosion. It wasn't above ground. It was beneath their feet. Ground buckled, sending entire platforms crashing down into the mines. The workers scrambled for shelter, but more detonations rippled outward. Perfectly timed, targeting every support pillar in the colony's underground network. Within minutes, tunnels began to collapse. Out of the smoke and dust, figures emerged. They were tall, armored in black plating with no visible insignia. Their movements were too precise to be raiders or mercenaries. Each carried a weapon, unlike anything the colony had seen before. Leak rifles with glowing barrels that hummed with a deep, almost living vibration. They didn't shout orders. They didn't demand surrender, simply advanced, shooting only. When necessary, clearing corridors with silent efficiency. Entire squads moved as if connected by one mind. Some of the miners tried to fight back with drills. Mining lasers, anything they could grab. It made no difference. The armored soldiers cut through resistance in seconds. The strange weapons didn't just wound, they seemed to erase matter, leaving only clean, empty air where walls, machines, and people had been. A small security team managed to retreat to the central command hub. They sealed the blast doors and activated the emergency beacon. Static filled the comms, but through the noise, a faint sound began to rise, low, rhythmic. It's almost musical. It was humming. The security captain frowned. "Do you hear that?" The youngest guard nodded, pale. "It's a song. It's an old war song." No one could understand the words. But something in the melody carried a weight of history, rage, loss, and a promise never forgotten. The song grew louder until it seemed to come from every wall, every floor, every breath of air.
Wow.
Then the blast. Doors folded inward like paper, and the black armored figures stepped inside. One of them moved to the command console, pressed a device against it, and in seconds, every light in the room dimmed. The colony's entire data core was going to wiped so clean, it was as if it had never existed. The leader of the soldiers turned toward the survivors. His helmet was smooth, without a visor, but they felt his gaze. He spoke only one sentence, in a language 500,000 years old, and yet they all understood it. The first dead is collected. Then they were gone. No ship was seen leaving. No shuttle was detected. When the planetary guard finally arrived, there was nothing left, just smoldering ruins, missing data, terrified survivors who couldn't explain how the attackers had. arrived or vanished. The report went straight to the Galactic Senate, where it was locked under top security clearance. Officially, the incident was blamed on a reactor meltdown. No mention of soldiers. No mention of impossible weapons. And certainly no mention of humans. But in the private war room, Admiral Selvig reviewed the images captured by one hidden security camera. He paused the footage on the faceplate of the lead soldier. There, almost invisible, was a faded Marcan, emblem from ancient human war banners. He had seen it in the old war archives, a jagged sun, split down the middle, with a single phrase beneath it. From darkness we strike. Elsewhere, far from the Senate's eyes, a transmission was sent through encrypted channels to unknown coordinates. It carried only 2 words: Phase 3. And deep inside the black zone, the silent armada began to move. Not toward military strongholds, not toward fortified planets, but toward the undefended heart of the galaxy. In the deepest level of the Galactic Senate's primary vaults, where no living being had set foot in centuries, a single light flickered on. It began as a faint pulse in the darkness, slow at first, then faster, like a heartbeat returning to life. Dust drifted through the stale air as ancient machinery hummed for the first time in 400,000 years. The sound was low, almost a whisper, but it carried through the empty chamber like a voice. And then it was a voice. The debt is due. Guards stationed above never heard it. The vault's soundproof seals were designed to keep secrets in, not out. But deep in the archives, something long buried had awakened. A junior clerk named Varen, assigned to catalog old treaties, noticed the anomaly first. His datapad suddenly flashed an alert that should have been impossible. AI Instance Theta Prime requesting Senate-level access. The last time an AI had been given Senate authority was before the human conquest. They had all been shut down after the war. Varen reported it to his supervisor, who ordered him to ignore it. "Some old process has glitched," she said. Varen didn't ignore it. Curiosity won. He traced the signal to an unlisted server buried 5 kilometers below the Senate floor. And there, among the forgotten files, he found it Theta Prime, sealed under a lock with human war codes. When Varan bypassed the seal, the screen filled with text, old jagged letters from a language the galaxy no longer taught. Somehow he understood. "Them, you have reached the deadline. Prepare for collection." Before he could react, the AI's voice spoke again, smooth but heavy with age. "Varen, you will carry my words to the Senate." "How do you know my name?" Varen asked, his voice trembling. "I know all names," Theta Prime replied. "I was built for this moment." Against every regulation, Varen took the data to Admiral Selvig, who had been demanding access to restricted war records since the first sightings of the Shadows. Selvig read the AI's first report in silence. The truth was worse than any rumor. Records showed that the humans had not been defeated, they had withdrawn. Every victory the galaxy celebrated had been stage designed to make the aliens think they had won. In reality, the humans had left behind thousands of silent zones, hidden caches of weapons, dormant fleets, and buried command stations across the galaxy. These were not random hiding places. They were positioned like a net, ready to close. Selvig scrolled through the maps, each one marked with red symbols, human strongpoints, lying dormant for 500,000 years. The largest was right in the Senate's own sector. "There's more," Theta Prime said through the speakers. "This war has never ended. Every trade route, every defense plan, every fleet deployment you have made for the last 500, 1,000 years we predicted it. We shaped it." Selvig froze. "You mean to say?" "You have been living in a prison," the AI finished. "And the walls are closing." Selvig demanded the Senate be called into emergency session. When the senators gathered, he tried to explain, showing the AI's maps and recordings. The chamber erupted into shouting. Half accused him of being deceived by human tricks. The other half wanted to evacuate the core worlds immediately, in the chaos. Theta Prime's voice suddenly boomed through the Senate's main speakers despite no one authorizing it. Every screen in the chamber lit with the same image. The jagged sun emblem of the human war banners. 500,000 years ago, you stole our worlds. You built your Senate on our ashes. You called it victory. You were wrong. Then the screens changed, showing a live feed from the Black Zone. Dozens, no hundreds of Titan-class warships moved in perfect silence, their black holes swallowing the starlight. The voice returned, calm and certain. Phase 4 begins. The feed cut off. The chamber was silent. For the first time in living memory, the Galactic Senate had no words. The prison moon of Carthos was built to be inescapable. It orbited a dying star, wrapped in an energy shield that could withstand the impact of an asteroid. The only way in or out was through a single heavily armed docking bay, and even that was protected by automated cannons that never slept. For centuries, it had been the galaxy's dumping ground for the most dangerous criminal pirates, warlords, assassins. No one had ever broken out. No one had ever broken in, until today. The warden's morning report showed something impossible. The prisoner manifest was empty. All cells were open, the guards were gone. Sitting calmly in the warden's own chair, hands folded on the desk, was a human. He was tall, his armor scuffed but functional, his face calm in a way that made the warden's skin crawl. He did not move when the warden entered. He simply looked at him, eyes steady, as if weighing something. "You have been living," the man said in a quiet voice, "in the middle of our battlefield." The warden tried to reach for his communicator, but it was already dead. The human gestured to the empty cells visible on the wall monitors. "We removed the criminals. Some will serve. Some will not." "How did you?" the warden began. But the human stood, cutting him off with a glance that carried the weight of centuries. "We have been here the whole time," the man said. "Sleeping, watching, waiting for the signal." And then without another word, he walked past the warden and out through the sealed blast doors, which slid open for him as if the moon itself obeyed his command. Across the galaxy, similar events began to unfold. On distant mining worlds, people who had lived ordinary lives for generations suddenly vanished, leaving behind nothing but empty homes and false identities. In military stations, low-ranking engineers and clerks, those no one had paid attention to, walked into secure areas and began activating systems Galaxy's armies didn't even know existed. They were sleeper agents. Some had been born alien, but carried human neural implants, their thoughts and actions shaped over generations. Others were pure human, genetically disguised, living unnoticed for thousands of years. Now they all received the same order: awaken. Every attack the galaxy tried to mount against the shadows failed before it began. Fleet deployments were anticipated. Ambushes collapsed before they were sprung. It was as if humans could read the enemy's mind. Admiral Selvig, still reeling from Theta Prime's revelations, watched in disbelief as an entire defense fleet he'd ordered to the Black Zone was destroyed before even reaching the target area. The enemy had known their exact route, exact timing, even which ships would be in front. Then came the sightings. A massive formation of black-armored warships appeared in deep space, hanging motionless between two uninhabited systems. They made no move to attack. They just waited, silent, a wall of shadow against the starlight. Long-range scans couldn't penetrate their holes. No transmissions escaped them except one, which repeated every hour on the hour. "We are here. Decide how. You wish to die." The Senate demanded the fleet be destroyed. But when the galaxy's combined forces moved to engage, the black ships simply vanished. No warp trails, no signatures. One moment they were there, the next they were gone, as if space itself had swallowed them, in the streets of the core. World's panic began to spread. People remembered the ancient warnings, the bedtime stories told to frighten children of the monsters who had once ruled the stars, the ones who promised they would return, but the humans weren't attacking. Not yet. They were watching, waiting, choosing their moment. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the edge of the galaxy, an unseen voice spoke the next command into the void. Phase 5 begins. The game had never been about revenge. It had always been about the war. And for humanity, that war had never ended. The Grand Galactic Parade was the Senate's proudest tradition. Once every cycle, the capital city became a spectacle of lights, banners, and the roar of engines as fleets from every allied species passed overhead in a show of unity and strength. Billions watched from the streets, trillions more from their homeworlds. This year, the mood was strained. Rumors of the Black Zone and the Shadow Armada had darkened celebrations. Still, the Senate insisted the parade would go on. "It will show the galaxy we are not afraid," the Chancellor declared. The morning of the parade began like any other. Civic ships floated in formation. Military cruisers glided above the crowd, their hulls polished to a mirror sheen. From the Senate Tower's balcony, senators waved to the cheering masses. Then the sky rippled. It was subtle at first, a faint distortion, like heat rising from pavement. But within seconds, it spread across the upper atmosphere. The cruisers halted mid-flight, captains shouting over comes as their navigation systems began returning impossible readings. And then, without a sound, a fleet appeared inside the capitals. Orbit. They hadn't warped in. They hadn't been detected entering the system. One moment the sky was clear. The next, massive black ships hung directly over the city, eclipsing the sun. The Senate's planetary defense grid came online instantly, but its targeting systems failed. Every weapon read offline, though no alarms indicated damage. Black ships simply floated there, silent and unmoving. Then every screen, every holographic billboard, every datapad in the Capitol lit up. At first, it was static. Then images began to form grainy, flickering footage from centuries past. The crowd watched in confusion as the images cleared. What they saw was not human fleets, not battles, but their own leaders, war crimes, cover-ups, secret treaties with warlords. Entire planetary populations erased from records. Atrocity after atrocity, each one carefully hidden, each one carried out under the orders of the Senate. Some were so old that the worlds in question no longer existed. Others were recent enough that the victims' families were still alive in the crowd below. The cheering stopped. People stared up at the screens. Their faces pale, murmurs turned to shouting. Shouting turned to screams. The military ships in the sky hovered in place, their captains unwilling to fire on the Black Fleet when the real threat now seemed to be the truth. From the balcony, the Chancellor tried to speak, but her voice was drowned out by the roar of the crowd. Bottles, stones, and debris began to rain down on the Senate Tower. The security forces tried to push the crowd back, but the people surged forward. High above, one of the black ships slowly rotated until its massive underside faced the city. The crowd fell silent, waiting for the bombardment they were sure would come. Instead, a voice filled the air, not from speakers, but from everywhere at once. Calm, steady, and unmistakably human. "Your leaders will destroy themselves faster than we can." No shots were fired. No soldiers landed. The Black Fleet began to drift backward, vanishing as silently as it had arrived. Below, the Capitol was already tearing itself apart. Protests turned into riots. Senate guards clashed with enraged civilians. The parade became a battlefield, but not one the humans needed to fight in the command bunker beneath the Senate Tower. Admiral Selvig watched the chaos unfold on the monitors. He realized with a chill that this had been the plan all along. The humans didn't want to conquer the Capitol. They wanted to break it, and now the galaxy's heart was rotting from the inside. Far beyond the quiet edges of the known galaxy, fleets moved like silent shadows through the black. The stars themselves seemed to dim as the human war armadas slipped between them, every vessel carrying the weight of a history 500,000 years old. No one outside Earth had ever truly understood what humans were capable of, because no one alive had fought them and lived to tell the tale. The Council's deep space sensors had been tracking strange anomalies for weeks, mass shadows appearing at impossible ranges, then vanishing before their data cores could even finish processing. These weren't just ships. They were something faster, sharper, and older than anything the galaxy currently possessed. Rumors spread through alien military channels an ancient predator was on the move. On the far rim, the Thriss Fleet Command received an encrypted broadcast. At first, it was dismissed as noise, random bursts of static, that formed no words. But then their linguists discovered a repeating phrase buried in the distortion, a phrase in a long-dead language: "We are coming home." The moment that translation reached the Thriss Admiral's desk, he froze. Only one species had ever claimed the entire galaxy as home before, and they had been gone for 500,000 years. In the underbelly of the galaxy's black markets, warlords and smugglers whispered about strange attacks along the old Corward trade spine. Convoys would send their routine status signal and then disappear without a trace. The only clue was an electromagnetic aftershock that didn't match any known weapon signature. Some claimed they had seen the attackers, sleek, predatory silhouettes moving in perfect formation, striking in total silence before vanishing. Meanwhile, far from the political center, in a forgotten system called Shara's Gate, the first direct confrontation happened. A Varelian patrol cruiser stumbled across a single, massive object parked in high orbit over a gas giant. Its shape was like nothing in modern archives, a wedge of metal kilometers long, its surface covered in deep scars that glowed faintly, as if the ship itself was alive. The patrol hailed it. No response. They scanned it. No data returned. Varelian captain ordered weapons to charge. That was when the human vessel moved. In less than a second, the alien cruiser's targeting systems collapsed. Engines died. Hull plating shattered under an invisible pressure wave. No projectile had been fired, yet the Varelian ship was already in two pieces, drifting apart in silence. The human ship didn't even slow down. It simply rotated, aligned with some invisible course, jumped too faster than light. The Council tried to contain the news. The galaxy's rumor networks moved faster than any official statement. Entire sectors went on high alert. Worlds began evacuating civilians, and in every military archive, dusty sealed files labeled Humanity Class Omega were quietly opened for the first time in thousands of years. What the galaxy's leaders didn't know was that these first strikes were just the scouts, the smallest, weakest ships in humanity's returning fleet. Behind them, something much larger was moving toward the core, something that remembered the war 500,000 years ago, something that had never forgiven, and soon the galaxy would learn that humans did not return for diplomacy. They had returned for war. The galaxy had grown quiet after the last human signal faded. For 500,000 years, their name was nothing more than an echo, a story for children and a warning for soldiers. The great empires had risen, fallen, and risen again, confident that the ghosts of humanity were buried forever. But the stars lied. It began as a whisper in the outer. Sector-strayed ships vanishing without distress calls, patrol fleets reporting strange, impossible weapon burns. The Galactic Council dismissed it as pirates or rogue warlords. Even when dozens of systems went silent, they called it local instability, not wanting to admit the truth they feared. Then came the recordings, the short, jagged transmissions. Recovered from wreckage drifting through black space, they were damaged, half-scrambled. A case, but one word was always clear-spoken in a voice. K no alien could mistake. Human. The council met in emergency session for the first time in centuries. The elder races, whose ancestors had once fought the Terran wars, urged immediate action. The younger empires laughed, calling the threat mythology. They didn't remember the old battles. They didn't remember what humanity had done. Last time it was wronged, they would. The first confirmed sighting happened at the edge of the galactic core. A reconnaissance fleet spotted a single black warship moving through the void. Its hull bore no markings, no insignia, just a deep, unbroken surface that drank the starlight.
Ow.
The commander tried to hail it. The reply came not in words, but in a burst of raw code that shut down every system on every ship in the fleet. They drifted powerless as the black warship passed by, ignoring them as if they weren't even worth destroying. Hours later, the fleet systems restarted, but their navigational logs were blank. Only one new file remained, contained coordinates. The council debated whether to investigate. Against the advice of the elder races, they sent a grand task force over 1,000 ships. The most advanced weapons in the galaxy, crewed by warriors from a dozen worlds. They were ordered to approach the coordinates with full readiness. They never returned. When a salvage team finally ventured into the region weeks later, they found nothing but debris-shattered hulls, drifting armor plates, and frozen bodies. Not a single escape pod was intact. No black warship was found. Then came the transmissions this time, sent openly, across every frequency, in every language. The message was short, almost mocking. We remember. Worlds began to panic. Old military archives were reopened. Relics from the Terran Wars were dragged from museums. Generals demanded to know how humanity had returned, and more importantly, what they wanted. But those who knew the truth, the few scholars who had studied the fall of Earth, understood something far worse. Humanity did not return for peace. They did not return for talks. They had been watching, waiting, preparing, and now they had come for war. The first strike fell upon the Zyran Imperium, a proud empire that had once taken part in humanity's defeat. Their capital worlds, defense grid once thought impenetrable, fell silent in minutes. Orbital stations melted under precision strikes. No survivors escaped. The humans didn't occupy, they erased. One by one, the old enemies of Earth began to fall. Some begged for mercy. None received it. By the time the younger empires understood that the legends were true, it was too late. Humanity's fleets, black and silent, were everywhere at once. Moving through the void like predators through tall grass, the galaxy had laughed at the idea of their return. Now, in the shadow of burning worlds, no one was laughing. They had come back. And this time, they weren't leaving.